Welcome everyone. I want to give you a warm welcome to Encore's NAV 2015 webcast. My name is Carlos Eckert and I'm one of the product marketers here on staff at Encore. We're excited to have a very packed webcast prepared for you today. It's going to be packed pretty full and we're going to try to get through as much as possible. So we'll just walk through the agenda at a high level and review what we'll be covering. So like I mentioned, it's going to be pretty packed. We're just going to zoom through introductions and then we're going to dive into what's new in Dynamics NAV 2015. We'll put that, what's also on the technical side, we'll kind of put those two sessions together just to make sure that we get through what we're looking at today. If there's any time at the end, we will have a little bit of a Q&A. We won't be taking any questions actually during the webcast. But if you have any questions, you can send them through on the question panel on the GoToMeeting, and we'll be monitoring those and try to get through as many as possible at the end of the webinar. So, also, for those of you who aren't familiar with Encore Business, we'll be providing contact information at the end, so you can reach out to us with any questions that you have. So we're going to start the demonstration now. By handing it over to Aaron Cameron, who's going to walk us through the next section of the webcast.
Thanks, Carlos. So to give you guys a bit of an overview as to which sections of NAV we're going to cover off today as far as the 2015 version is concerned, there's a few new things that came out, and so we want to focus on really what is new between the previous version, NAV 2013 R2, and the current release, which came out October 1st of this year, NAV 2015. So first we'll cover off simplifications and a number of other smaller features that were added to the new version, features and functions. Next, we're going to have a little discussion about RapidStart, which is effectively a partner tool that enables us to do upgrades and implementations faster and quicker than we ever have before. We'll spend some time on cache management and what's new within that specific module. We've got some really neat stuff in Power BI and some new reporting abilities that we have in connecting Power BI and effectively Power Pivot to NAV. We're just going to have a real quick discussion around what's new and how we've been able to embed social listening directly into the NAV product as well. And then finally, we are going to show off the tablet client, which is an interesting thing to show via webcast, as you can't necessarily see the tablet, but suffice to say, you will be seeing me using nothing but my finger on a screen to navigate throughout NAV, which is quite cool. So the high-level topics of what's new with 2015. Again, the focus was on driving down the time and thus the cost to the customer in order to perform an upgrade from a previous version to the latest version of NAV, as well as driving down the cost of doing new implementations. Second area of focus was on ease of use, and that ease of use you'll see prevalent throughout the entire application, whether that's on the tablet that we show you at the end, or just the simplification right within the rich client, how we've been able to do and able to integrate Word-type document reporting directly to the NAV product is also quite an interesting one. And then finally, we'll look at the cache management and social listening, which largely takes NAV and looks out to web services out in the cloud and interacts with information that is not necessarily directly within your NAV product. So just before we move into the simplification process, as there may not be just all NAV users on the line, but rather some individuals that were new to NAV, I thought I would do a very quick overview as to what the product looks like in general. None of what I'm going to show you at this point is necessarily new to 2015, but really just a warm-up to some of the more specific topics that we'll get into in a minute. So right now you should be seeing my home page. I have specifically subscribed to the role of a small business user for tablet, and one of the reasons for that is that I can show you the tablet interface later on. But basically, the role that I choose when I initially set up my own personal preferences ultimately dictates the interface and what gets presented to me largely on my home page and everywhere throughout the system. So that role center shows a couple of things. Number one, down the left-hand side, I've got a navigation pane that allows me to navigate the long way throughout the system. And I do have the ability to modify this to my own personal preference. You'll notice NAV is very quick and easy to configure to how you want the information to be presented to you. So I'm going to create a new tab here. I'm going to pick an icon for it. And now I'm going to add some things that I want to see within that tab. So I'm going to add my list of customers. And I'm going to add a list of my sales invoices, let's say. And click OK. It wants to do a quick restart to refresh the page for me. And now you'll see that over here, I've got a new tab called NAV 2015 Webcast. I click into that, and I've got the two lists that I added to that specific area. That change that I made was very specific to my unique user. So the experience that I'm now building is one that is very, very personal, personal to me. Just to head back to the home page or role center, I've got a few other things that show up directly on my home page. Number one, I have the ability to quickly get a glance at how well my business is doing, and I've selected a few different things that I want to keep an eye on. Number one, I want to see how my overdue sales invoices are. So I can see I've got $114,000 sitting in that bucket. I can see I've got $243,000 sitting in my sales this month bucket. And in both those cases, they are interactive. So based on that tile, I can quickly launch into it and see in detail what is making up that $243,000 for this particular month. Back. You can see I've got some key performance indicators on the right-hand side of the screen, so largely intended to be a bit of a personal dashboard. So I've subscribed to a couple of these ones. They also are interactive, so clicking on my customer, it will then show me how Canon Group sales are made up in terms of that $61,000 that's presented to me there. I can also switch between a variety of different KPIs to ultimately see whatever it is I want to see out of the NAV system. This is an interesting one that shows my total sales sliding downwards in trend for European Union clients and then sliding upwards for my foreign clients. We also have another neat one that ultimately shows me my trial balance, a mini P&L almost, directly on my homepage as well, so I can get a good sense as to how the business is doing. And yes, it indeed has dropped off from November 2015 to December 2015, and then we're not having a great January 2016. I see that right on my homepage. And then finally, I've got the ability to navigate to any one of my customers directly off of my homepage. This is not the complete list of customers. This is the select few who have made it onto my personal list so that I can quickly navigate to the ones that I deal with most frequently, which is a lot faster than trying to go the traditional way, which is logging in or seeing the complete customer list and then trying to find the Canon Group within it. So it's a nice way of surfacing up to your homepage those records that ultimately you deal with more than any others. So quickly back to my role center. And the last thing that you've got right within the homepage is the ability to quickly launch and create new documents. whenever it is you need to again. So the concept here is to ultimately reduce the number of clicks required to get to the main functions that you as a user perform within your NAV application on a day-to-day basis. So that is the very, very quick overview of NAV in general. Now I wanted to get to a topic, the topic of simplification. So the story around simplification is Microsoft was getting feedback from new customers that NAV was very nice application, but one that was difficult to learn, difficult to pick up, and did some things that didn't make necessarily a whole lot of sense to an individual, coming off the street and wanting to use it. And so they took that feedback and they did some focus groups based on doing exactly that, which was pulling people off of the street, putting them in front of NAV. They had to sign some non-disclosures saying that they have truly never seen NAV before, and then Microsoft just said, go. And some of the feedback that came back was, well, we'll see ultimately the results of those conversations. But at the end of the day, they really needed to focus on making the application intuitive to a user who had never necessarily seen it before. And we're going to show you what some of those things were. So at the end of the day, they came back with a couple of design principles for 2015. One was improving and paying attention to the visual quality of the information being presented on page. So you'll see it's graphically cleaner than previous version. It is also, you'll see some nice transitions, especially when we get to the client, between graphs and between screens, which is also really nice. They really focused, again, like I mentioned before, on reducing the total number of clicks in order to get to either the transaction or the function that the user really needed to do. And then you'll also see just being able to interact with Office in a variety of different ways within the application. So specifically, what do all those things mean? What did they do? Well, they did a couple things. Number one, within the tiles that you saw on the home page, they made them effectively expressive. And so what we mean by that, if I just flip back to the application. Okay. There we go. Is you'll see that not only do we have the tile like we did in 2013, but in 2015, we now have a visual indicator of red at the top of that tile, which is basically telling me red is bad. So having $114,000 in overdue sales invoices in a given month is not a good thing. But $243,000 in sales is a good thing, and it's sitting at green. And of course, run-of-the-mill or just okay would show up as yellow. Individuals with access would have the ability to go in and ultimately, say for that overdue sales invoice account, change the threshold for what is good and what is bad. So in this particular case, I want to change my threshold because I've grown in business, and so now I'm going to say that $150,000 is actually okay. So we'll see what happens. So as soon as I change the threshold, I now, on mine and anyone else who has access to this particular KPI, that $114,000 now becomes an acceptable amount to have in your overdue sales in invoice amounts buckets. So that's one of the things that they did around what they call expressive tiles. So the next thing that came out of some of these design sessions was I'm going to talk about two at once, showing which fields are mandatory on a page. So one of the things that users came up with was they would go and they would enter an invoice, for example, they would try to proceed to the next step, and they would get a nice big red X error message that telling them that they're missing a particular value or something is not complete prior to posting. The other thing that they said was those individuals did not understand why or what they needed to do when coming to a new sales invoice in regards to the number of that sales invoice. So for all of you NAV users who use NAV on a regular basis, you'll know when you create a new document, you have to tab twice once you open that new sales invoice, for example, in order to auto-generate the number. So in specific circumstances, what Microsoft has done, based on meeting some criteria of having your number series set up and only one number series set up, that number will effectively be generated for you automatically, and you won't necessarily even see the number field. So let's take a look at those two specific things and see how they render in NAV. Okay. Back to my user interface there. So let's start by hitting that sales invoice button. And again, users of NAV will notice my number field for the sales invoice is no longer there. So that's the first thing. So it automatically is effectively generated for us behind the scenes. Tony will explain a little bit about what those criteria are for when the screen will not show the number series.
Yeah, so number series can be set up in multiple different ways. You can have a number of different number series pertaining to the same document type. In this case, the number series will not show up, or the number field will not show up, when there's only one number series defined for that particular type. When there is an available number in that number series, i.e. it's not at the end of that range, and that number series is set as the default and you can't override it on that particular document. So number series can be set up that it will suggest a number for you, but you can override it. And so if that's been set up that way, then the number field will still show up here on this particular document.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. So the next thing that's new about this particular interface is you'll notice that there are red asterisks placed by a number of different fields. What these are graphical indicators to the user that these specific fields are mandatory fields prior to you being able to post. So one quick note is it does not stop you from saving a record prior to having those in. So the validation is still on posting, but the idea was that the individual gets to see what they need to enter before it will allow them to post, rather than not knowing, posting, and then getting the error message. So one of the questions we've had when demoing 2015 version is that's great. How easy is it to set up additional required or mandatory fields within the system? And so the answer to that is actually got a whole lot easier. So what I'm going to have Tony do behind the scenes, who's in the room with me here, is I'm going to have him make the description or comment field a mandatory one for me. He's going to do it very quickly. And I am going to refresh my page. Pardon me. I'm going to exit out of the system and we'll generate a new sales invoice. And now he's got the description / comment field as a mandatory one, and now it shows up graphically for me as well. So I'm going to start entering my sales invoice again. I'll pick a few items here, and then I'm going to show you one of the final things within the simplification area. So I'm going to sell 2 of these Antwerp conference tables, and anyone who uses NAV or has used it historically will notice that I have a total calculating at the bottom of my page. So again, one of the biggest complaints that NAV has had throughout the years since it came out was in order to get a running total, I've always got to hit the statistics button in order to get that. Now, based on this new version, for the simplification user, we actually get to see that running total as we enter it. Tony's going to explain a little bit of the reasons why it took so long for this particular feature to show up when it was so hotly requested. But hey, it's finally here, so we're all pretty happy about that. Tony?
Yeah, so some of the reasons Microsoft decided not to have a running total on these documents is that, particularly in areas like North America, you can have a lot of taxes involved in the total value of a particular document. And so if you were to try and constantly keep those values updated every time you modified or changed a field, for example, a quantity or a price, and with taxes on tax, etc., you can end up having a bit of a performance degradation within the system. So what Microsoft has done here is they've actually worked around making the calculation of the totals, including tax, a lot more performant in 2015 so that they can can have it update automatically after making changes. However, in cases where there's an exorbitant amount of tax being used in your particular business, the recommendation is to actually remove that feature. But for 90% of the customers now, this will be a workable solution.
Thanks, Tony. Good. So the last thing to show around simplifications was removing the user interface elements that the user does not have in either their license or in their permissions. So Tony, you want to take us through a little bit about what that ultimately means to the end user and to businesses running NAV?
Yeah, so there's two sets really of permissions that relate to a NAV installation when it comes to a customer of NAV. The first would be the permissions that you have with your license file, and so that can include things like ISV add-ons, for example, maybe payroll or maybe some of the enhanced job functionality that come from our ISV partners, as well as the core functionality that you get when you purchase your license from Microsoft, so that being the Foundation and the Extended pack. So those permissions are one grouping that allow you to access certain areas within the NAV implementation. The other area is actually assigning roles and permissions to users. So in that case, you might have somebody who only works in sales orders, and so you don't want them working in the purchase order area. And so you can actually go and assign roles and permissions to those particular users that are a little bit more granular and maybe pertain to their job responsibility within your organization. What Microsoft have done in 2015 is enabled the system to automatically remove UI elements within the client that the users don't have permission to, and also your license file doesn't give you permission to. Now, it doesn't do that automatically. If for whatever reason you still wanted to see them there, it is a setting within the Navision service tier that you can configure, but if you do want to see those removed automatically, that feature is available and you can turn it on.
Thanks, Tony. So that basically means that users that don't have access to certain areas no longer see the areas they don't have access to,
yes.
Which makes it a lot easier than reducing the number of complaints whereby an individual tries to launch the HR module and then they get the red X saying they don't have permissions. So now they just don't know they don't have permissions, and they don't get upset about not having access to a particular area. So I want to talk about a couple other really small features that came with the new version of NAV. They're really, really small ones, but they're actually kind of neat. And so we thought I'd really quickly take you through those. So on the general journal now, we have the ability to track quantities as well as dollars, rather than trying to track quantities in the amount field, which has some other implications. So that allows for some pretty interesting and neat analysis, and it also has an impact on how we use unit or statistical accounts going forward. The other one is we now have the ability to omit the description on a journal as well. And so what that means is, and you'll see this in a second, when I select a particular GL account in my journal, the description of the GL account defaults to the description on the journal. What that means is that the user then does not need to enter anything in order to get the transaction to process. So what we've done instead is enabled some ability on the GL account card to not have that value default, and then to make the description value on the journal mandatory, thereby forcing the user to enter in a description of what is actually happening in that particular journal. So let's see those two features really, really quickly. So it's in the same area. It's in the general ledger area. It's in my general journals, and I've got one particularly right here. And you'll see as I kind of tab through it that I've got not only $3,000 for the specific transaction, but that I also have a quantity amount of 15 as well. That will then track all the way through to your general ledger entries once posted. So that's the quantity field now being available. So the next one I wanted to show was defaulting the description. So for example, I'm going to take, again, the consulting services account. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hit Tab, and you can see that the description for consulting services now defaults. So that allows the user to quickly go through and post it, but now we lose all of the ability to see whatever this specific transaction was about. So I'm just going to navigate to the GL account card for consulting services, and I'm going to check this new checkbox. So for this account and this account only, I'm going to omit default description in the journal. navigate back to my journal. I'm going to create another line just to show how it works. I'll select the same GL account, and I hit Tab, and now it does not default. Tony would then go ahead and do some making the description field mandatory for this specific transaction, and therefore the user now has to document effectively what they're doing. So I told you that that specific demo would be quick, and it was. The next thing I want to talk about is RapidStart, and while I think most of the people on the launch event are customers and not vendors, and RapidStart really applies more to the vendor, I think there's some knock-on effect to customers that make this specific topic relevant. So a number of years ago, Microsoft changed its release strategy for Dynamics NAV, and they moved from having large releases every roughly 3 years or so with small service pack releases in between to a much more flat release schedule. And effectively what we have now are annual releases, and we've had them very consistently for the last 3 years. New NAV versions, at least in Canada, were showing up on pretty much October 1st of every year. So we're now down to a 12-month release cycle for new versions, and the amount of functionality and change that comes with those versions is largely the same from version to version. In addition to that, they've come up with a different release schedule for cumulative updates, in that they come out every month. And so with the amount of change that's happening and the frequency of the change that's happening from Microsoft's perspective, they really needed to make sure that the ability for the partner to apply both updates and perform new implementations and new upgrades was as easy as possible. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're here and we bill on an hourly basis. So the longer it takes us, the more it costs you. So by driving that amount down, we can do these upgrades faster, better, quicker, more effectively, and ultimately what that means to the customer is cheaper and faster. And so they really spent a lot of time in building the various tools to do that. So within the RapidStart for upgrades, they included not only the ability to upgrade the data faster than they used to be able to, but they also included a merge utility to merge code from previous versions into code for the most recent version with much less conflicts, or what they call noise, so that the efforts of the developer when upgrading your code were much more targeted to only the areas of potential conflict. And they've reduced that by, Tony, I want to say like 75% or so.
Yeah, something around that. We're still working on testing that internally and figuring out kind of how that cuts down on the time.
Perfect. Thanks. They did also come up with some improvements for the RapidStart toolkit for data migration for customers that are coming from new or other applications and wanting to roll out NAV as well. So this is applicable to both customers and potential new customers to NAV. They also introduced some new functionality within cache management. Now, I know we have a rather global representation of individuals from around the world, so this particular piece is really focused on the U.S. and Canada. But effectively, they've come up with a new feature called a payment reconciliation journal. And what this journal allows you to do is to automatically pull in bank transactions so that you can reconcile effectively the checks that have cleared your bank with the checks you've written within NAV. Without having to do that manually. So I can demo this, but I won't do a ton of it. So I'll just do it with screenshots. But largely, if you look at the slide and the second screen on the slide, there's a new area within the payment bank account card that allows you to define the tolerances for automatically matching those checks that have cleared your account based on a percentage or based on a dollar amount threshold. There is definitely some work that needs to go into getting your bank accounts properly hooked up to the account your NAV accounts. Currently, for those who are on the line that are from Canada, this is not quite available just yet. It's coming, but it is coming very soon, and that's why for you folks we thought we could include this part. They've also added a few additional fields on the Payment Reconciliation Journal that enables easier reconciliation once those transactions are brought into NAV. Also coming very soon is the ability to effectively subscribe to those banks for both reconciliation purposes as well as accounts payable purposes to communicate with those banks effectively directly using a web service, rather than the current method that our clients use, which is download a bank statement to a file location on your server and then import it from there. So this becomes much more a live link or initiated from the system link that automatically does this by accessing the bank directly through these web services. They are not, again, quite there for our Canadian customers, but be warned, it's coming very soon and will be available. My guesstimate is probably within the year. Next section we wanted to talk about was Power BI. It's a slightly technical demonstration, but I'm going to try to show off some of the ability of NAV to interact directly with, well, for the most part, it is Excel. This, while it has been touted as a 2015 feature, is actually available to those clients running 2013 versions and greater. You do require Excel 2013. You do require the Power Pivot and Power View add-ins, which are both free ones that you can download from Microsoft as long as you're licensed on Excel 2013. The demo that I'm going to do, I'm going to actually pull data not only from NAV but also from the Azure Marketplace. So I'm going to subscribe to some web services out there in the cloud, and I'm going to pull data from those services directly into my dashboard. And then ultimately to publish this and publish it in the right way, you do need Office 365, although I'm not going to do that as part of my demo. The nice thing about doing this way is most of what I'm doing is largely Excel. And so for the user community that's out there, most of people know Excel. And so the ability to do this becomes something that is really in the hands of the user, not necessarily in the hands of the partner anymore. In addition to that, as I've kind of shown you on the left-hand side of the screen, everything that is on the requirements list there is effectively technology that you will all already own in many ways. You also have the ability not only to connect to NAV, but to connect to other data sources, whether that's a different line of business application that you have, or whether that's some legacy data from a previous system, or that Azure Marketplace data. You've got the ability to combine and mash together data from multiple sources. And where you need assistance from a partner like Encore is largely in creating the queries. Now I'm going to create some very simple queries for you guys, but once we do that, the process of exposing those queries externally and accessing them becomes relatively easy. So the demo I'm going to show you today is I'm going to go into the NAV development environment. For those old users of NAV, it is the object designer effectively, and I'm going to create a number of query objects. I'm then going to go to the interface rich client for NAV, and I'm going to set up these as web services. Then I'm going to go into Excel and reference those web services so that I can bring in the data into Excel. I'm going to add some marketplace data to that. I got to tie all that data together, and then I'm going to do some additional stuff within Excel to, well, effectively make it look pretty. And then we're going to do some analysis on this, and I'm going to do it in less than 10 minutes. In order to do that, I have done a little bit of pre-work in order to get that all set up. But as I mentioned, we start within the development environment. So this should look familiar to anyone who uses Dynamics NAV and does so from a technical perspective. We have a section called the query object. I'm going to go there, and I've created 3 custom queries, one for sales invoice lines, one for items, one for customers. I'm going to create a new one just to show you the method that I use to create these. So it's as simple as a query gets, and really all I'm going to do is I'm going to add a basically the entire table. In this case, it's the vendor table. From that vendor table, I want to add in, say, a number of fields. I'm going to select the fields that I want exposed in this view, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to take those 3 fields, and it's going to add it. I'm going to save the query as object ID 50,004. I'm not actually going to use the vendors in this example, but I just wanted to show you how quickly it is. If you need to do a simple query like just get all of the data from one table in NAV, it really becomes that easy. So I've got my 3 queries. I'm now going to go back to the NAV environment, and within the 2015 version, 2013 and later version, I have the ability to go into Administration, IT Setup, General, and we have a new feature here called Web Services. And within Web Services, I can create something new. I'm going to reference, for example, that query object that was my vendors. And literally, the effort it takes to expose this externally is to hit that Publish button. And now, when hitting this particular OData URL address, I would be able to bring in a list of all of my vendors. What I've also done for the model is I've added, I didn't have to write a query for them, I just added a page, so I can reference a page. And the 2 pages that I wanted to reference as far as my dashboard is concerned are the countries and the salespeople that are assigned to ultimately the invoices, sales line invoices that I've sold in a given time period. So now that I've got that, I'm going to keep that open, and I'm going to go into Excel. I've already created an Excel dashboard, and really what I need to do is go to Power Pivot, and I need to pull in some additional data. So I go to Power Pivot. You'll see I've got the Power Pivot tab. I hit the Manage Data button. Sorry, I did it a little quickly. And you can see from here that I have already added salespeople, customers, sales line invoices, date, items, and countries. Let's say, for example, I did not have countries here. The process to add countries to this model is really as simple as going up to select some data from a data service. We're going to get the OData, and really what I need to do is I need to reference back from here my country's OData URL. Go back to Power Pivot. I paste that URL in there. Select Next and Finish, and it will now suck in all of that country information. Okay. So here now I've got a list of countries. The only other thing I need to do here at this point is connect my countries ultimately to my customers. So what I do is I go to my customers, I select this country code, which is coming in from the customer query that I wrote, and I create a relationship between my customer table and my countries table, and I'm effectively linking together the country code in the customer table and the code in the country table, and I hit Create. And now I've effectively linked those 2 together. And if I want to see how that's linked together, I can also see how all of these data elements that I'm pulling in are related. So it just gives a second to render here, and there's my countries. Let's just move it over. We'll move it up here. So I can now see my data model shows. I really do most of my analysis off these sales invoice lines, but because these sales invoice lines are related to customers and customers are related to countries, I can now pull in the full country name and do analysis on country. Same things with salespeople as well. I can do analysis on salespeople. The last thing I just wanted to show is that like I said, you're not limited to just the NAV data. So I can also go out and get data from the Windows Azure Marketplace. And what you saw there was the ability, or what I included there ultimately was I pulled in a really simple one, which was date. Date, I'm going to do a search. for date. Gives me a bunch of results. I want to see only the free ones, and actually do that paid search again. And this one here is the one that I believe the one that that I picked. So I've subscribed to it, and I subscribed to it. It was a free one. But one example that you could use is weather. I always like to use the weather example. So I could pull in from a web service the weather for all areas of the world on a given day, and then match the weather in that region with the date of the sales transaction to see who buys stuff on a rainy day, or how much more profitable or how much more sales do I drive when it's a sunny day. Anyway, the process is quite simple, and in this particular case, I subscribe to the date one, and it's bringing in my Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, as well as specific dates. So now that I got everything all hooked up, I can close this view of Excel. I can go over to my Power View dashboard, which I have created some of already. And now I'm going to do some real quick analysis. And we're running a little bit short on time, so I might go quickly here. So one of the things that's not showing here are salespeople. So I want to see my revenue by salespeople. Let's throw the name over here. Now it shows my salespeople, and what do I want to analyze my salespeople by? Let's go to the sales invoice lines, and I want to see dollar amount. So drag that on there. Now I see which salespeople have sold what, and now what I want to do is I want to show that differently. I can do other. There we go. And now what I'm showing is pie chart wise, how much has John sold versus Peter. It is interactive, so I can click on various things. So if I want to see who's better at selling finished goods, I can now see the difference in split. John Roberts sells 540 of the $655,000 we sold in finished goods. Peter sells the remainder, which is 26,000. I would love to do more analysis, and I do like to do one where I bring in the date and I actually show you how much each individual sells on a given date, but we are running a little bit short of time. But that's ultimately the way in which we create a dashboard. The rest of it is now publishing it, and you can publish this just as an Excel file, or even render it as a web page within a team site within Office 365, which is quite cool. The next thing I wanted to get into was reporting, and for this section I'm going to hand over to Tony. I don't want to go through too much of this before handing it over. Just know that in order to do what Tony is about to do, you need a few things. You need Word 2013. You need a free Jet Reports add-in for NAV 2015. You need NAV 2015. This does not work in 2013, R2 or prior. And you need some sort of PDF writer or Microsoft Reader or something along those lines. Okay. So Tony, we're handing over to you now.
So what I'm going to demonstrate here is a new reporting tool that Microsoft has released with Dynamics NAV 2015. We are particularly enamored by this new tool, and we think our customers will be too. One of the frustrations we've had with implementations and with upgrades is around reporting and the time it takes to get a well-designed and well-executed document for our customers when they send them to their customers. The new reporting tool, which was introduced in the role-tailored client, is not the same as the old what you see is what you get tool that we had. And so when it comes to making minute adjustments to reports, it started to become a bit of a time-consuming process. And so Microsoft have produced this new reporting tool as a way to allow us as partners to put the power to change the layout and the formatting of reports into our customers' hands. So you guys don't need to contact us for minor report modifications. So the way that this works is we start out with a template, and we can get some of these templates off of office.com. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just in Microsoft Word, and I'm searching for some templates in the cloud. So I'm going to look for a sales invoice. I'm going to try and find one that I think suits my needs. So why don't we go with this one here? That looks good. It's got the stuff I need. It's got an invoice number, a bill to, a ship to, a place for a logo, and some lines. So I'm going to create this guy. So I'm going to say create, and what it will do is it will download it to my instance of Word. And what I want to do here is I want to save this for later use. So I'm going to save it in a folder that I called Tony's demo. I'm going to override the one that's here, replace the existing one. As you can tell, I've done this demo once already. Okay, so now I'm going to close down Word. I'm going to go back to NAV. Now what I need to do is I need to take this Word template that I've just seen, and I need to associate it with a report object in NAV. Now that report object is generated the same way as any other report object. But what happens is the fields that are defined get exposed out as data items in JET's Express for Word. So what I've done is I've created a cut down report, 50,001 report layout. So like 50,100. Just going to initialize the reports here and figure out what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I know I have my report down here, 50,100, sales invoice, Tony demo. Now right now it's using the built-in RDLC. I don't actually have a built-in RDLC for this report, but that's how it's set up. What I want to do is I want to apply a custom layout against this report. So I'm going to hit custom layout here, and I'm going to say new, and I'm going to say I want it to be a Word layout, and say OK. So it's generated a new record for me here. Now what I need to do is I need to import the layout that I just downloaded in Word and associate it with this report ID 50,100. So I'm going to import the layout, choose sales invoice, say open, and now this report is associated with that particular layout. What I want to do is I want to edit that report. So I want to, almost like a mail merge process, I want to associate the fields that I have in this report with the layout. So I'm going to say edit layout, and it's going to open up Microsoft Word for me. It's going to open up JET Express for Word, and it's going to have my layout here. Now let me move my GoToMeeting out of the way. So what I have in here in this JET Express for Word is, if I actually look in the document, I can see it has exposed out all these different fields for me. Now where those fields come from, if I go into the developer environment here and I find my report 50,100, what we can see is they actually represent this report layout here. So I've got company and customer and shipment. So if I expand company, I can see here's all the fields that I'm exposing out. And that's what I see here in my JET Express for Word. So what I want to do, and I won't do every single field here because we are running out of time, but what I can do here is I edit the header here, and I basically choose the fields that I want to see. Let's go back here. Choose the fields that I want to see, and I replace them with the fields that I've exposed out from my NAV report. So here I'm wanting to enter the customer's address information. So let's this report is playing up. Okay. Let me go and get a different layout. Close that. Save. Okay. Let's try this guy here. Let's go with this guy. Let's see if this one works. Okay. I'll save. Paste that guy there. Okay, perfect. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's save. Okay, import the new layout I downloaded. Okay, now let's see if this one wants to work. Okay. So let's go back here again. I think this guy's going to work this time. Yeah, so I can start dropping these fields in here. A phone number here, so I'm going to find my phone number. I can get information from the sales header, and like I said, I'm not going to put all of the information in here due to time, but I do want to really want to concentrate on showing how this works here. So obviously a sales document can have one or multiple sales lines, and we need to represent that in here too. So one of the features that we have is the ability to highlight where we want to see a repeater, choose the data item that represents that repeater, and hit insert repeater, and then I get my fields in here too. So here I'm quickly going to put in a quantity, I'm going to put in a unit price, and again, because of time, I'm not going to do everything. And then down here, I'm going to show that I have my report totals, and I can put a total, including tax, in here. Okay. Now what I do is I save this and close it, and then I import it back in, and I can run this report here, and I can say that I want to put it to PDF. Open this up. And here's the invoice that I just downloaded. We can see I haven't put all the fields. Have a repeater that comes in here, and my total shows up there. So I've done this, which is great, but really what I want to do is I need to attribute this to the sales invoice process, because if I go to a sales invoice now, go up here and find a posted sales invoice, and I hit print on this guy, it's going to show the standard NAV, which we don't want to see. We want to see the new report that I've designed. Where they go? Here it is. So this is the old report. I need to take my new design and associate it here. So what I'm going to do is go back into my custom layouts and go back to my report selection. And what I want to do is I want to say I want to choose a custom layout for this particular report. It brings up my list because I can save multiple different layouts per company. Say OK. And now it's associated report 50,100 with a custom layout instead of the standard RDLC. I'm going to make one more change, and that is I need to go to report selection, sales. And I need to say when it comes to an invoice, I don't want to do 10,074 anymore. What I actually want to do is 50,100. Just my demo. And now if I come back here again and I say print, and I push it to PDF, say open, we can see that it's actually used my Word document. So we're going to go a short on time there, so I couldn't fill in all the fields, but I think that shows the value there and how quickly we can put the power for our customers to generate customer-facing documents themselves.
Report scheduling is up next.
We'll do our report scheduling? Okay. So report scheduling, if I get back into my role center again, Microsoft also given the ability to schedule reports. To get this running, you need to have the NAS running, and it needs to have the job queue up and running. That's a simple configuration, and if you're not able to do that yourselves, we can come in and get that configured up and running for you, probably about an hour. What Microsoft has done here is they've taken the ability for some reports to be pushed into this report inbox. So for example, if you're going to run big financial reports at the end of each month or maybe the end of the year, you don't want to run that during the day because it's holding up your session. Maybe you just want to put that report into the box and have it run overnight so that when you come in the morning, it's either there as a PDF or you can send it to the printer as well. So what we have here is the ability to schedule as an option on the print now. So this is telling me the report ID. I can give it a description. I'll leave that as detailed trial balance. I'm just going to put it to a PDF, but what I can say is I'm just putting T in, and that will basically tell it to run immediately. So I say OK to that, and I come back here and say show the queue. It says my report's ready to be run there. Let's refresh this again. And that's gone from there. And if I come back here and refresh my role center, we can see I got the detailed trial balance there. So I can say show, and it's going to allow me to open up this particular report. Now in this case, what I actually did is I had a filter applied as well when I ran this report, and that's been recognized here. So it had 11,200, and that's why I only have one GL account here. So let me just do that again and show you that I can change the filters. So if I go detailed trial balance, that's where my filter was. I'm going to take that guy off, and I'm going to say schedule. PDF again, I'm going to say T because I want it to run immediately. Say OK. I'm going to go and show, I can show all reports or unread reports, so I'm only seeing the latest ones. I'm going to show queue, it's in process. It was a little bit bigger because I'm doing more than one account. But I'll come back here, refresh here. Here's my unread report. I'm going to say show, open. Now we can see the filter's gone up here, and I have all of these GL accounts. So it recognizes filters as well. It's not, what you put in there is what it's going to recognize in the report box. So we think this is definitely another great feature. Means you're not clogging up your system when running end of month and end of year processes.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. That was great. So next thing we're going to talk about, and appreciate where you're going a little bit over time, so we will go rather quickly through these sections. The inclusion of social listening into the 2015 environment. Let me go through this one really quickly. I've not installed it within the application today. Largely what this enables customers, or our customers to do, you as users, is embed this social listening directly as a fact box within a couple of objects within NAV, specifically the customers, vendors, and products or items area. So what this effectively is doing is based on, for example, your customer. It will show you the basically sentiments of the posts out there on the various social sites, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and return to you within your NAV environment how people out there are tweeting about your specific customer. So it enables you to kind of also drill down and see what some of these tweets are about, and why maybe the buzz is positive or negative on a particular customer, why you're looking at their customer card, or potentially even whether the buzz is positive or negative about one of your items, so that you can be pre-positioned to defend any issues that might be being posted negatively about your particular products. Like I said, I don't have that installed today. A couple screenshots for you on the slide. I want to move to the next section and the final section of the day, which is the tablet client. So I'm going to go through really quickly a couple of different things. The tablet client is actually a relatively easy one to install, and it's installable on a variety of different devices. What you see here on the screenshot is 3 different devices and how it renders the exact same role center on each of those devices. We'll show you this live in just a second. We also show you on the right-hand side how it looks when you tilt it sideways. Interesting thing. And there's a lot of good benefits from this. Number one, getting NAV out into the hands of the individuals that are in the field or that are executive in nature, where you want the interface to be easy enough for them to pick up without really having to have any training. Gets it out into the field, into the hands of salespeople that can now interact with their customers and directly with NAV. And I like to talk about the modern track as well, in that the users that are coming into the workforce these days are not used to necessarily working with the desktops and big bulky laptops, and really more used to working with tablets and tablets only. My wife, for example, does not have a laptop. She uses an iPad and nothing else. And so creating an experience for those users who are entering the marketplace that is familiar for them and is on the devices that they're used to working with is, I think, a really, really big thing for attracting new employees. Really quickly on this particular one, it's available on a variety of different devices, so it's not necessarily confined to just Microsoft. You can also run this through Apple. You can also run this on Android devices as well. So I'm going to skip through these really quickly. So Tony, do you want to really quickly talk about the supported devices and the limitations?
Yeah, the web client is actually the tablet client is actually an extension of the web client. So the standard web client can be accessed using any browser. In fact, we've used browsers such as Dolphin. However, when you go to and put the extension of tablet.aspx at the end, that will only be supported in IE or Chrome. The requirements for getting the tablet to run are that it's really designed for a 7 or a 10-inch tablet, not something in the middle. I think we call those phablets, the phone tablets. It's not really designed for that kind of experience. And it also needs to have a certificate. So we've used a self-signed certificate here, but you can also get a certificate from a certificate authority. The way that we've connected to it is we've used both VPN and direct access, but if you were to have a web-facing server, you could also do it over the web, which is why you have to have that certificate in place. The other things to note are that it doesn't allow you to work offline. So you do need to be connected to have the data, so there's no offline mode there. And also it doesn't, at this time, control the GPS or the camera, though we think they would be great features and definitely some business processes that we could use those particular parts of a tablet or phone with, and so we're hoping that they get added in the future.
And what was involved in getting everything set up?
Yeah, so as I said, you need to have a certificate and you need to have the web client installed. But once that's done, the tablet client is installed as part of the web client install, which is one of the options in the wizard when you're installing the server, which is great. And then just getting that certificate. If you're using a authorized CA certificate, then you don't need to install it locally. If you're using self-signed, then you do have to install that locally.
From a user's perspective, we were given a new tablet this morning at 9 a.m. that had never had access to the tablet client. We had to effectively download it and hook it all up. I think the end-to-end process was maybe 10 minutes. Okay. All right, great. So let's get into the tablet. It'll be the last little thing that we show today. I'll try to go through this nice and quickly. Just double check that I've got this on my tablet now. So I'm going to do this entire demo, like I said, using my index finger. Although you'll see and you'll note from the tablet that the position of the buttons are largely in places that is easily accessible with your thumb. It's just sitting on a desktop right now, so I have to use my finger here. So it looks, and it is actually effectively the exact same role center that I was earlier subscribed to when I did the overview type demonstration. So just like the overview, I quickly navigate. I tap on the tile to see my overdue invoices. I've selected the very last one at the top right. I got 3 little dots. I can select that and show the post document. So effectively, I was 2 touches away from the home page. And now I am physically at the sales invoice for that specific customer that is overdue, and I can see it was for a computer and a server, and I can use my thumb to scroll down to the bottom to see anything else relevant about this specific invoice. Back to the home page, I also have access to those tiles. They are also interactive, so as I switch between graph and graph. Might be hard to see over the web, but the transition of moving from one graph to another is very aesthetically pleasing. And just like before, I am able to touch to drill down into a specific area. So in this case, it's showing me the customer ledger entries that were of type foreign. And again, from here, I can navigate to specific documents and transactions. I have that trial balance, just like I did on the home page at home when I showed you at the very beginning. And I also, just like Tony showed you a few moments ago, subscribe to a number of reports that are now delivered to my inbox. So this also works on the tablet client. So I'm going to take my top inventory items. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to use the reader in this particular case to take a look at my top 10 inventory items. Once here, I can move this over to give me more real estate. Again, using my index fingers, I can zoom in and out to see or to get a better view as to what items I'm selling, and it looks like the Innsbruck storage unit with door is my biggest item. Now I'm going to flip back to nav, and I can do the same thing and go ahead and do the detailed trial balance as well. At the very bottom, I also have those favorite customers that you saw. This is a slightly different view of those same customers, so I'm going to, actually, I want to hit that one. I want to hit the one above it. Can and group, please. And I have the fact boxes on the left, so I can see I've got no quotes, I've got one sales invoice, I've got 4 posted invoices. We'll get to those in a minute. And if I scroll down, pardon me, if I scroll down to the very bottom, I actually get some KPIs within the tablet client that are kind of neat. So I get an aged AR for this specific customer. I can navigate to anything that's looking like it's blue to see what is to see what was on those old invoices. And the other thing is, while I'm directly within this customer, again, I hit the 3 dots at the top left, and I can launch a sales invoice. Because I'm on this particular customer, it defaults for me. So I'm going to enter again with my finger here the item number. So it brings up my items to select on the side. I scroll down using my finger again, and you can see it's only rendering a few at a time, but as I scroll, it quickly gets more for me. So I'm going to sell a Calgary whiteboard. I'm going to enter in a quantity of 2. When I picked the wrong customer. But, no, actually did get the right one. Okay, so I'm going to sell 2 of those. It gave me a warning that I was out of stock. It's now giving me a total. So I like this this sales order. Potentially I'm with the customer directly in front of them. Again, I use the 3 little dots at the top right, and I'm going to post this. Do I want to post this invoice? Yes, I do. So the invoice is posted and moved to the posted sales invoice list. Another new feature within Nav, it asks you if you want to go to the posted invoice rather than you having to back out and navigate to it. So yes, I do want to see that posted invoice. Here it is. And again, I'm going to hit those 3 buttons, and maybe I want to print it, or maybe I want to email it to the customer right while I'm with them in front of them. I'm just going to print it. I'm going to send it to PDF and view it on screen. See its pretty format. And you guys remember when Tony updated this invoice format? Now I see the Word version of this specific invoice. Of course, he wasn't totally finished, but now I actually get to see the new format. It's readily available for anyone who's producing that invoice that quickly.
You can also email it.
And I can also email it, like I said earlier, but I don't have Outlook installed on this one. I just got this laptop this morning, or this tablet this morning, so I won't do that. So Carlos, I think we're done with the rest of the demos. Thank you for everyone who kind of stayed on for the extra 10 minutes that it took to get through everything. I think Carlos, you have a couple wrap-up notes to go through, and we're done for the day.
Right. So thank you, everyone, for attending the NAV 2015 webcast. Thank you, Aaron and Tony, for a very fast, succinct demonstration of NAV 2015. Some brief information for those of you who aren't familiar with Encore. We're Canada's largest Microsoft Dynamics partner, and we work with many Microsoft Dynamics NAV clients throughout Canada, as well as NAV customers and their subsidiaries in other countries, such as the U.S., South America, or Central America, some in Africa. And so if you'd like to contact us, you can either reach us by calling us at the number listed there, the 888 number, or you can also email us at encore@encorebusiness.com. If you'd like a recording of the webcast sent out to you, please email encore@encorebusiness if you haven't already. And this concludes our webcast. Again, thank you for attending, and have a great rest of the day.